Mm-hmm. Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. I am excited to be here this week. Hold on. Make sure we in here. Okay. I think we're in here. So as many of you all probably know, I am the owner of Cannabis Nursing Solutions. I am the nucleus of the Highline Tribe, which is a community of holistic healers, healthcare providers, nurses, people who believe in cannabis medicine and other holistic healing modalities. And I do a ton of other stuff. I've written books and all those things, but I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about those things. Um, just know that I have a wealth of knowledge to share. And so this week, I actually posted in the Facebook group a poll. I've been doing those for the past 2 weeks now. And just so I can make sure I'm talking about the things that you all want to talk about instead of the things that I want to talk about, because sometimes the things I want to talk about aren't the things that you want to hear about. And so this week, it has been a consensus. I think over 40% of you all voted for us to talk about cannabis consumption considerations. And so there are a lot of people, in my opinion, that have conversations like this. And for me, the challenge comes in not repeating some of the things that you actually might hear mainstream or like in most other situations. And so I was kind of challenged. I was like, I don't want to talk about, I hate talking about the same thing over and over again, you know? And so if any of you know anything about me in the past, I actually have a training course that is now on demand, but I used to teach it live. And so sometimes the repetition might just only be in my own head too. So I want to make sure that if you are here, if you have some reason why you chose that option or some thing that you want to know about cannabis consumption, please make sure you put it in the comments so I can make sure I address it. But I came to you with some things to think about. Most people that I work with are healthcare providers, are healers themselves, are nurses, physical therapists, social workers, things along those lines. And there is a lot of necessity for us to be the person who is giving the healing, right? We are the ones who are supposed to be taking care of other people. And the problem comes is that when it's time for us to be taken care of, nobody is around. Nobody is capable of doing it. They don't know how to do it, right? We're the ones who know how to do it. And I want to say that we are patients too, for a lot of reasons. And even if you're not a patient today, there's a high likelihood that you could be a patient tomorrow. And so I think that there's a little bit of deprogramming that needs to occur around the nurse's role, who she is as a person. And because I've met so many nurses that I work with that are suffering in silence, they have double lives. They present themselves as one way in their role as the healthcare professional, and then when they come home, the reality is something completely different. And so I think that the first consideration around cannabis is just recognizing that you are a patient too. You have potential to be a patient too, right? If you have some sort of chronic illness, you would be so surprised at the amount of nurses and healthcare providers that suffer with like diabetes and chronic pain and arthritis and all these things, right? And in most patients that I consult with, right, because now we're at a nurse patient relationship, in most situations, you know, it is completely acceptable for me to bring up the considerations around cannabis. But when we talk about nursing professionals, healthcare professionals, holistic healers, that conversation is a little bit harder to have, right? Because there's a certain expectation that we know. But the reality is that most people don't know, even if you are a healthcare provider. So most of the work that I do is around helping holistic healers be able to build holistic healing services for their clients. But the first step in that has always been, whenever they come to work with me, is to discover the healing ability within themselves. And so a lot of people, especially because my niche is cannabis, right? A lot of people will consume, right, in secret and in silence. And through the learning that we offer, be able to navigate their own relationship with the plant, right? And so I think that the second thing that we need to consider, so now we know that we're patients. The second thing that we need to consider is the fact that we also need to be intentional about the way that we care for ourselves, right? And that shows up in a multitude of different ways. And so I'm going to take it from the perspective of the endocannabinoid system. So we all have an endocannabinoid system. It is the largest neuroreceptor system in the body. The cannabinoids in the cannabis plant bind to this receptor system. And the whole purpose of this relationship is to support homeostasis. The cool thing is that the cannabinoids can actually bind to other receptors in the body. And I won't go into deep science about it. The science part is not really even my thing. But I think the reality is that when we consume cannabis or any other cannabinoid for that matter, because we do have pharmaceutical cannabinoid like products out there, like Marinol. When we do consume those things and they bind to that endocannabinoid system, it is the master regulator. It does affect the other systems in our body. And so I think the other misconception around cannabis is that cannabis is the only thing that can help balance that endocannabinoid system. And so what are some other ways that you can balance your endocannabinoid system, right? And so a few of those ways show up in the form of meditation, yoga, acupuncture, right? A lot of us, because we're not practicing intentional consumption methods or therapeutically consuming, right? We are in a lot of cases over consuming, or the other alternative is that we're scared to consume altogether. And there's a multitude of reasons why we might be scared to consume. And the biggest one for especially licensed practitioners is that we have a license to protect. But we're going to lean into the fact that maybe we're over consuming, maybe inhaling a little entire joint in one sitting, maybe eating the whole brownie in one sitting. I have found that microdosing is the most therapeutic approach to cannabis consumption. And so that usually shows up in about 1 to 2 milligrams of a product, right? And so it's harder to measure in smokable form. Smokable forms have a very quick onset, very short duration time. The gratification is instant and is quick. And that's where a lot of people fall into the habit loop because it is such a quick gratification. A lot of people are also scared to eat it. And so because they've had bad experiences with it, because there was too much consumed at one time. And so when you are considering your consumption method, how you choose to consume, when you choose to consume, how often you choose to consume, you need to consider the onset, the duration, time, and the method of consumption. And we talk about that in my training course where we break down why each play a part in how it interacts in the body. I think the other thing that needs to be clear to everybody is that it is a very individualized medicine. Not everybody's going to respond to everything the same exact way. But there are some certain things that show up when it comes to consumption consistently across patient populations and different symptom management situations. And so if you're suffering from pain, if you're suffering from sleeplessness, if you're suffering from depression, anxiety, which are very common, and a symptom of burnout, which is why this is so important for us healthcare providers, is because 64% of us are suffering from, and probably more because a lot of it goes unreported and unrecognized. But 64% of us are suffering from burnout like symptoms. And those symptoms could be managed with cannabis, to be honest with you. And some of us are using the cannabis, but maybe not getting the benefits of the cannabis because we're not considering all three components. And plus, and here's the thing, mainstream media, mainstream social media, most people who are putting stuff out for shock value and exploitation and marketing benefit and all those kind of things, they're going to tell you that cannabis or CBD is going to cure all your problems, right? But it's not the case. A lot of times the cannabis serves as a catalyst to being able to discover or unlock your mindfulness, unlock perception around, how you operate, unlock where the trigger lies, right? And so, and this has happened quite a bit, where one person will have one consumption experience, never touch it again, because in that experience, they were able to look at themselves outside of themselves and be able to see where they could enhance their life experience, right? And so I think another thing that we also need to talk about too is healthcare providers tend not to want to access cannabis programs, right? And so the cannabis programs show up in the form of, being able to go to a dispensary and get certification and things like that. The common thing that comes up when I talk to people about that is that they're scared that their name will be on record or on file, or that their license will get taken away and things across that, along those lines. I'm not saying that it can't happen, because it has in the past. But I also think that we are in a transition from prohibition into, a legal market. And so this legal market creates a space where you do have access to cannabis in its legal form. And as long as you don't show up intoxicated, then there will be no concern or consideration for drug testing in most situations. I can't speak for every situation out there, but there has to be a reason why one is drug tested. And so I think one of the other issues that comes up around this as well is around the fact that you can show up and appear to be intoxicated from lack of sleep, right? If you come to work and let's say you were up all night, maybe, I don't know, you were up all night with the baby, I don't know, till 5 o'clock in the morning, you have to be at work at 7. Of course, you are going to appear intoxicated, right? But that doesn't mean because you have the cannabinoid in your body that that's the reason why you're intoxicated, right? Or you can show up to work just fine and have cannabinoid in your system, and it's just there. Because just because it's there doesn't mean that you're intoxicated. Right? And so I think some of these conversations need to be had because a lot of us are operating in fear around the plant. We're consuming in secret around the plant. We are suffering in silence around the plant. And if you are consuming, I think the biggest takeaway from this talk is to make sure that you're doing it intentionally and have all the information you need in order to do it intentionally, so you don't intoxicate yourself to the point of not being able to function, not being able to accomplish your goals, not being able to build the business that you need. But then the other part of it is, what action steps are we taking to really increase our ability to heal ourselves? Because every time we experience a stressful situation and never cope with it, every time we have a big emotion and never deal with it, every time we find ourselves in a traumatic situation and never confront it or get therapy for it, or what have you, the more that we stack illness in our bodies. And so I think the biggest thing around cannabis consumption is the fact that it is medicine. We need to recognize how it can help us, support us, and serve us therapeutically, if that's your choice, and if that's a way that will help you get there. And if it isn't your choice, how can you support your endocannabinoid system so you can best be most functional in your everyday life, so you can have a clear mindset, have a clear emotional control, to be able to go in with optimism into the day, right? Because every day doesn't have to be a miserable day, even if you're doing something you don't like, because there's always something to have gratitude for. It's just sometimes we have a hard time seeing it in the backdrop of the chaos that is the healthcare system, right? And so I think my overall takeaway is that obviously cannabis is medicine. That's always the narrative when you're talking to me. Um, yes, it is medicine, but we also have to weigh out the risks and the benefits. We need to consider onset, duration time, methods of consumption. There are a vast range of methods of consumption. I mentioned edible, I mentioned smokable. I usually say this one because it gets the biggest response. There are suppositories out there. So there are multiple different ways that you can consume it. You can also consume it in a way where it doesn't impose intoxication. So that way you are most functional throughout the day, as long as you know how to consume it intentionally. And usually microdosing is the key. And so I hope this was helpful for you all. I still do have my training course now. I don't teach it live; it is on demand. But if that's something that you are interested in learning more about, please just let me know. Um, in a couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks, June 27th, I'll be hosting a live webinar, and we'll go into some of this a little bit more deeply, how all the spiritual stuff and the cannabis and being able to build a business, how it all connects together. So that way you can not only find healing for yourself, but find healing for the patients that you serve. As healthcare providers, we see a lot of illness. We've seen a lot of death. We've been in pretty traumatic situations in the roles that we play. And so for me, the transition from the bedside to where I am today has been very transformational. I do not deal with too much stress in my life today. Not that it doesn't exist, but it's not to the extent of what I experienced at the bedside. And I was talking to my kids about some of the things that I've dealt with, which that's another thing, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but we need to talk about it. We need to get it out and make sure that people know some of the stuff that people in this world are dealing with. Like diabetes can get pretty severe. A lot of times when we talk about some of these illnesses, we talk about it on a surface level, but because our friends and family that we're interacting with are usually hiding it or masking behind it. But I know what it looks like when that person comes in and their leg needs to be amputated. How long has that disease process been going on before the need for amputation? Right? How long do we suffer in silence without talking about these things? And so the first step, and I keep saying this, but it's so important. The first step to being able to heal other people is to be able to heal yourself. And that's through acknowledging some of the habits that we have, some of the ways that we live our life, some of the ways that we consume, and being really honest about that. And so that's part of the reason why I created the Highline Tribe, to have some of those conversations. It was an inadvertent side effect to me wanting to help people build businesses, where through the process they discovered intentional consumption patterns and how to center themselves, how to find healing, how to find spirit, how to recognize when spirit is talking to you. All those things are things that just kind of came out of this process of being able to evolve. Last thing, I am also working on a book, and I'm really excited. So I just want to put that out there because it walks through the process that I've seen happen time and time again for the nurses that I've worked with. And I'm now ready to put it on paper. So Stigmatized was the first step, where I was able to identify it in my own personal life. But now that I've identified it in other people that I've worked with, this framework has been validated and repeated. Now I'm ready to put that on paper. So definitely stay tuned. I don't have a title for it yet, but once it comes out, you will have all the steps to the framework. So you don't have to directly work with me. You can purchase a book for low cost in order to walk through the steps on your own. So definitely stay tuned. That is coming in the near future. But I really appreciate it. I didn't see any questions in the comment. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. I will definitely put some links in the comments so that way you can access them on your own time, so you can see, what I just referred to. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I, always available. Definitely inbox me with any questions. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm Ashley. I'm just a girl who went to a HBCU, who essentially was able No problem. Who essentially has been able to create her own life in her own terms. And have a great day.